The Middle East is holding its breath. What many have long feared has finally come to pass, a direct and devastating military confrontation between Israel and Iran. The conflict erupted into the open on June 13, 2025, when Israel launched a series of calculated and widespread airstrikes against Iran. Codenamed Operation Rising Lion, the mission's stated goal was to neutralize Iran's advancing nuclear program. Israeli jets streaked across the sky, striking over 100 targets deep within Iranian territory. The attacks were precise and damaging, targeting military installations, critical infrastructure, and tragically, residential areas, shaking the very foundations of regional stability. The world watched in stunned silence as reports confirmed the extent of the damage. Key nuclear facilities, such as the heavily fortified Natanz enrichment plant, suffered catastrophic blows. Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, grimly reported that thousands of centrifuges essential for uranium enrichment were destroyed or rendered useless. Satellite imagery later confirmed direct impacts on the underground halls of the facility, a severe setback to Iran's decades-long nuclear ambitions. The strikes sent a clear and aggressive message, but they also lit a fuse that now threatens to burn uncontrollably across the entire Middle East. Iran's response was swift and furious. Within hours, under the banner of Operation True Promise 3, the Iranian military unleashed a massive barrage of its own. Nearly 400 ballistic missiles and a swarm of drones were launched towards Israel, a retaliatory strike of unprecedented scale. While Israel's sophisticated air defense systems, including the famed Iron Dome, managed to intercept the majority of the incoming threats, they were not impenetrable. Israeli officials confirmed that approximately 35 missiles breached their defenses, striking military and intelligence sites. The attacks were a stark demonstration of Iran's capability and willingness to hit back, turning a shadow war into a terrifyingly open conflict. The human cost of this escalation became immediately and painfully apparent. In Iran, the toll has been devastating. Israeli strikes have killed 224 people and injured over 1,200, with 90% of the casualties being civilians. One particularly horrific incident saw a 14-story apartment building in Tehran flattened, killing 60 people, half of them children. In Israel, the missile strikes have also claimed innocent lives, with authorities reporting at least 10 fatalities, including children. These numbers represent families shattered, communities terrorized, and a generation of young people now growing up under the shadow of war, their sense of safety completely erased. The escalating violence between Israel and Iran has sent tremors of fear far beyond their borders, placing neighboring Arab states and Turkey in an excruciatingly precarious position. These nations find themselves caught in the crossfire, geographically and politically, between two powerful and enraged adversaries. The primary fear is that the conflict will not remain contained. A stray missile, a mistaken target, or a deliberate expansion of the war could easily drag them into a vortex from which there is no easy escape. For countries like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and even Jordan, the prospect of their territories becoming a battleground is a nightmare scenario they are desperate to avoid. The threat is not merely abstract. It touches every aspect of daily life for ordinary citizens. The skies that were once pathways for commerce and travel are now potential war zones. The stability that has allowed for unprecedented economic growth and development in the Gulf now feels fragile. Imagine living in Dubai or Riyadh, looking up at the sky and wondering if the next flash of light is a firework or a missile. This anxiety seeps into the fabric of society, disrupting the sense of normalcy and security that people depend on. The conflict has already triggered mass evacuations from Tehran, with roads clogged and gas stations overwhelmed, a stark preview of the chaos that could engulf other major cities if the war spreads. Economically, the stakes could not be higher. The Middle East is the world's energy heartland, and this conflict is a dagger pointed directly at it. Following the initial Israeli strikes, oil prices surged by over 11%, reaching their highest point in a month. Images of a massive blaze at a fuel depot in Tehran after an Israeli strike on Iran's oil and gas sector sent a chilling message to global markets. For the Gulf states, whose economies are built on the foundation of oil and gas exports, a wider war threatens their very economic survival. It could disrupt shipping lanes, damage production facilities, and send global energy prices spiraling, triggering a worldwide economic crisis that would spare no one. This fear has galvanized leaders across the region, from Ankara to Riyadh and Doha. They understand that what happens between Jerusalem and Tehran will not stay between Jerusalem and Tehran. The stability of their own nations, the safety of their people, and the future of their economies are all on the line. They are not just passive observers. They are stakeholders with a vested and urgent interest in dousing the flames before they consume the entire neighborhood. The conflict represents an existential threat not just to the combatants, but to the entire regional order that has been carefully constructed over decades, forcing them to confront a future they have long worked to prevent. In this moment of extreme peril, a new and complex dynamic is emerging, placing Arab states and Turkey in the unique role of potential mediators. Historically, the region has been divided into rigid blocs, but recent years have seen a significant realignment of interests. Many Gulf states, particularly the UAE and Bahrain, have normalized relations with Israel through the Abraham Accords, establishing direct diplomatic, economic, and security ties. This has created unprecedented channels of communication with Israeli leadership. These are no longer just back-channel whispers. They are formal, established relationships that can be leveraged in a crisis. Simultaneously, these same Arab nations have maintained their ties with Iran. Countries like Qatar and Oman have long served as intermediaries between Tehran and the West, possessing deep understanding of Iranian politics and hard-won trust with its leadership. Saudi Arabia, after years of intense rivalry, has recently taken steps to restore diplomatic relations with Tehran. This dual-access diplomacy is a game-changer. It means leaders in Doha, Riyadh, and Abu Dhabi can pick up the phone and speak directly to decision-makers in both Israel and Iran, a capability few other global powers currently possess. This puts these nations in a powerful, albeit delicate, position. They can act as a bridge over the chasm of hostility that separates the two warring states. They can translate messages, clarify intentions, and convey red lines in a way that reduces the risk of catastrophic miscalculation. When tensions are sky-high and direct communication is non-existent, it is often a trusted third party that can break the cycle of escalation. The Gulf states and Turkey understand the languages, cultures, and sensitivities of both sides. They can navigate the intricate dance of regional politics. Furthermore, their motivation is rooted in self-preservation. They are not mediating out of pure altruism, but because they have the most to lose from a regional war. Their economic visions, like Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, are entirely dependent on regional peace and stability. A war would shatter these ambitions and deter foreign investment. This gives their mediation efforts urgency and credibility. They are not distant observers but invested stakeholders, fighting for their own future as much as for regional peace. This unique combination of access, understanding, and existential interest makes them the most credible peacemakers in this crisis. With the specter of a wider war looming, Arab states and Turkey have wasted no time in launching a full-scale diplomatic offensive. This is not a passive wait-and-see approach. It's an active, multi-pronged effort to pull the region back from the brink. Leaders from Qatar, Oman, and Saudi Arabia have been working the phone lines relentlessly, engaging in a flurry of high-stakes calls with officials in Tehran, Jerusalem, and, crucially, Washington. Their message is unified and clear. An immediate ceasefire is essential to prevent a complete catastrophe. They are urging all sides to step back, de-escalate, and give diplomacy a chance to work before the conflict spirals out of control. A central focus of these efforts is to revive the stalled nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States. Regional sources have confirmed that Tehran has reached out to both Qatar and Oman, signaling a willingness to return to the negotiating table. However, Iran has made its position clear. Any talks are contingent on a complete cessation of Israeli military action. This puts the mediating states in the position of trying to broker a ceasefire for talks deal. Oman, a seasoned mediator in such matters, is reportedly already drafting a formal ceasefire proposal designed to create the necessary space for dialogue to resume, aiming to address the root cause of the current crisis, Iran's nuclear program. These nations are also leveraging their influence in Washington. Gulf officials have directly appealed to the Trump administration, urging the US president to apply pressure on Israel to halt its offensive and embrace a diplomatic solution. This is a critical piece of the puzzle, as American involvement remains a powerful factor. While President Trump has expressed frustration with Tehran, he is also facing a U.S. public that is overwhelmingly opposed to military intervention, with 60% of Americans wanting the U.S. to stay out of the conflict. The Arab states are attempting to align their push for de-escalation with this sentiment, arguing that a diplomatic path is not only preferable, but also more politically viable. The urgency of their mission is underscored by the sheer unpredictability of the situation. Every passing day brings new attacks, new casualties, and a heightened risk of a fatal misstep that could ignite a chain reaction across the region. The diplomatic clock is ticking loudly. The efforts by these regional peacemakers represent a critical firewall, a concerted attempt to contain the blaze before it consumes everything in its path. They are not merely calling for peace. They are actively trying to construct the off-ramps from the highway to war, using every diplomatic tool at their disposal in a desperate race against time. The fate of millions may well depend on their success. The path forward from this crisis presents two starkly different futures for the Middle East. If diplomacy fails and the conflict continues to expand, the consequences would be catastrophic, far exceeding the devastation already witnessed. Imagine a scenario where the war spills across borders, drawing in neighboring countries and their powerful allies. Critical infrastructure, oil refineries, desalination plants, and major ports from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean could become targets. This would not only paralyze the regional economy, but also create a humanitarian crisis of unimaginable proportions, disrupting the supply of food, water, and electricity for tens of millions of people who have no part in the conflict. A wider war would shatter the lives of ordinary people in ways that are difficult to comprehend. The relative safety and prosperity that many in the Gulf have come to enjoy would evaporate overnight. The bustling metropolises of Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi could face direct threats, turning hubs of global commerce into zones of fear. Jobs would disappear as industries grind to a halt and foreign investment flees. The social fabric, already strained by regional tensions, could tear apart, potentially reigniting old sectarian conflicts and creating new waves of refugees. This is the dark future that awaits if the drums of war are allowed to beat louder than the calls for peace. However, there is another path, a more hopeful one being forged by the region's own leaders. The current crisis, as terrifying as it is, has also created a powerful impetus for regional cooperation. It has forced nations to look beyond their historical differences and recognize their shared interest in survival and stability. If the mediation efforts of the Arab states and Turkey succeed, it would mark a watershed moment for the Middle East. It would prove that the region's problems can be solved by the region's own powers, reducing reliance on external actors who may not always share the same interests. A successful, regionally led de-escalation could lay the groundwork for a more secure and prosperous future for everyone. It could build trust and create new mechanisms for conflict resolution, ensuring that future disputes do not spiral into open warfare. For the average person, this means a return to safety, a chance to plan for the future, and the opportunity to see their children grow up in peace. It means jobs can be created, economies can flourish, and the immense human and financial resources currently spent on conflict can be redirected towards education, health, and innovation. This is the promise of a new dawn, a future where cooperation triumphs over conflict, and the entire region can finally realize its incredible potential.